I think we've had a full day filled with information, and I think a lot of people are learning more about Dolby, right? I think it's still that same where people are still understanding really truly that we're this entertainment tech mogul, and I think especially with all the technologies that we have coming up. But I think for this session, want to turn and talk about the internships and how interns to employees and things like that. So I do have a couple of questions for you, but for everyone who is joining us today, definitely encourage everyone to engage in the chat. If you have questions, please pop them in the Q&A. But I think really quickly, I know some people are probably already familiar with our faces, but want to do a quick introduction. So my name is Nina Saladam. I'm the senior recruiter with University Relations and Recruiting. And, like this, I think for this session, we will just keep it casual, conversational. Obviously, if anyone has anything to add to, feel free to jump in. Okay. So let's go ahead and start with some questions here. I think, I'm to elaborate for people who are joining in the audience. I think one of the things, because so I should preface too for everyone on the call, Jim, Jaclyn, and Sunday are all intern hiring managers and have had interns within, whether they're current interns right now or within the past couple of years. So for the three of you, and feel free to jump in, no order specific, but want to know whether your team prefers hiring an undergraduate, so anyone who's pursuing bachelor's, or a graduate student, and if so, with the delineation why.
I guess I can.
Okay. I think I can get the conversation started, since I believe Jim and Jaclyn, they're more leaning towards on the graduate side. So hi, my name is Hanyang. I work as a QA manager for the Vision platform development team. And in the past couple of years, we have a pretty good track record hiring interns and also converting them into full-time team members. Actually, matter of fact, right now, all of our team members are at some point once an intern in our team and they got converted eventually. So in terms of Nina's question, for us, it doesn't matter too much. We don't have a real strong preference between undergrad or graduate student. However, that being said, we do realize based on our past experience that graduate students tend to have a little bit stronger research and problem solving ability compared to our undergrad interns. I guess that's just the nature of their course and their academic life they have experienced before. But yeah, in general, we don't have a real strong preference.
Yeah, I can go. So hi, everyone. My name is Jaclyn, and I am presently a staff researcher on the Dolby Vision Applied Vision Science team. On our team, although I'm going to say it doesn't matter because I personally started just with an undergrad degree, I will echo a little bit of what Sun suggested, is that it's really about your potential experience in school. So if you come in and you had amazing experiences as an undergrad and you can think on your feet and you're very quick to research, that is not a roadblock at all. We're looking for people, not necessarily what school you came from or what educational background you have in particular. It's a matter of what you bring to the table now. Also, as an intern, I mean, I started as an intern at Dolby, and the idea is essentially we're looking for these building blocks. We don't expect you to know everything by any means, but we do expect you to be able to learn quickly on the job. We will tend to hire a mixture. Like on my team, I have one master's, one undergrad, but it differs from team to team.
No, thanks, Jaclyn. And Jim, do you have anything to add on that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, historically, for my team, we've mostly hired graduate students, and I think that's because we were looking for a specific experience that people already had, and that continues to be the case. There are certain things that we need, and so by looking primarily at graduate students. We know that they have the background when they walk in. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think definitely for all three of your teams, it's super different. And I do want to emphasize also for everyone on the call, like internships too, it is on the needs of the business, right? Like, so the work that we do, obviously, yes, we're coming up with innovation and different technologies, but a lot of it too with our internships, we really want our interns to be inundated with the teams and working on real projects. So a lot of it is based off of where we are with our projects and what industry is doing and looking for. So I think with that to kind of transition, you know, Sun, you kind of talked a little bit about research, so maybe you could start off with this question, but you know, what role does research play in your determination of who you hire? Because I think a lot of the times, right, and for everyone on the call, you know, we recognize too that you all are in school. So for the most part, you do have similar experiences and you do have similar resumes and similar curriculum. So Sun, if you want to start with there, like, you know, what role does research play in determining who you hire?
Right. I think for our team, I did mention research, but I think the more correct term would be independent ability to study and resolve questions and seeking answers in the way. So research for me, for our team, can be a very general, broad sense of concept. But for us, it's more focusing on problem solving and driving that question to a solution eventually. Because as a testing team, you know, testing oriented, we very often folks are facing customer issues or field issues, which are not in a very nice and simple term fashion. So those kind of like problems analyzing and you know, debugging and also you know, seeking the right person to find the answer to a particular question, those kind of ability is more important to our team. And I would say for the most part, if you considering, you know, debugging and answer seeking as a part of the research, then I would say research plays a huge role in our daily task. I would say like more than 80% of the time, we need to figure out what's the solution, what's the answer, and sometimes there is no clear answer. So I guess that's, you know, that's the reality. Sometimes we have to seek for the best alternative, or maybe making some trade-off from time to time. So yeah.
No, definitely. Yeah, definitely on the problem solving part. Jaclyn, did you have something to add?
Sure. In essence, I mean, our team specifically is a research team. So that is what we do on a day-to-day basis. At the same time, it's not often that you have an undergrad or even some master's students that have done hardcore research in their educative careers. And that doesn't necessarily stop us from wanting to hire them, but it is an extraordinarily important skill. That was the biggest eye-opener coming to work is, you know, in school, there's 99% of the time someone with an answer key sitting there, and you know they have the answer and you have to figure it out, but you know that there is an answer and there are roughly easy step-by-step ways to get there. That's not the case in industry necessarily, and that's something that, especially in our team, we're faced with on a day-to-day basis. So when we're looking for candidates, having some research background is definitely helpful because it's experience that you can talk through. Not required, but having at least the mindset of research is extremely important.
No, for sure. You definitely make a great point, Jaclyn. I think. Oh, go ahead, Jim. Did you have something to add also?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a great point. Especially undergrad engineering, there's a tendency to cut everything up into these chunks that you can solve in the space of a week. And so it's easy to get the impression that if you can't glimpse a solution within a couple hours of looking at it, that perhaps one doesn't exist. And as Hanyang said, and Jaclyn was talking about, it's really important to have that mindset of, you know, especially if you're actually doing the research side of things, you're trying to get to an interesting endpoint, and it's not necessarily that you're even solving a particular problem from the outset. And that's not something that a lot of STEM backgrounds learn until kind of it gets screened in graduate school to some extent, and then You have to really look at it in a different way. So it's also, I would add that it's cyclical, right? At least that's been especially at a place like Dolby Laboratories. I mean, it's Dolby Laboratories, not Dolby Widgets. So we're all invited to have a certain amount of creativity in what we do. And in fact, even once a year, we literally ask everybody in the company if they have an idea, come and try to build it in a couple of days and show us what you got. And so even within regular jobs, it becomes cyclical. So there's a phase when you're not really sure what's going to happen. And Dolby is actually cool in this regard, in that it's not about next quarter. It's about what's a really good thing that we're going to work on. And how much time does it take? We're not sure. And there's a lot of willingness to invest in that. And as a result, then, as engineers, or not just engineers, because this is a great confluence of art, science, and engineering, right? That's one of the things that's great about Dolby. We get to participate in those things, and you start out, and it is really pretty researchy, even for the folks who are doing coding. You may get drawn into some real research. And then as it becomes more and more productized, you might get to do something completely out of field. Like we spent a year encoding movies for Voodoo, so that anybody who watched a 4K movie probably was watching something that my engineers did in Burbank. And then we moved on to products and scaling that up. And even then, there are problems that come back to solve that involve that research skill. So I don't know. It's different. In my background, I worked for many years at another company. It wasn't like that at all. It was much more about, we're going to go solve this problem. So anyway, that's my perspective on the research side of things. And it is, again, one of the reasons that I tend to hire graduate students, because it's a little bit more likelihood that they've got that background.
Yeah, thank you, all three of your insight. I think at the core of it too, for everyone on call, it really just is also about the job. When we put up on the job description for our internship specifically, no one is trying to trick you. Like, what is there is what is needed and what is preferred. So that's kind of what I'll add on to that. I think, I think would be fruitful is if, again, because the three of you are hiring managers, could you kind of give a specific if you can say, right, a specific project that your interns are working on currently or have worked on before? Because I think that could kind of help the students on the call kind of get a gauge of what is upcoming or what can be up next.
Are we going in the same order, or do we? I guess I hit the button.
Anyone
first,
can jump in. Yes, I know I'm staring at at all of you. If you unmute, and then I'll call on you. But go ahead, Jim. You could start.
Yeah, sure. For our internships, I actually regard it as much, because a lot of it to me with an internship is I'm usually not looking to solve something immediately, or if I am, it's something that is I'm not trying to put into a product immediately. And so a lot of what I am kind of hoping for is that just what's being talked about in this session. I'm kind of trying to see if this is someone who I really would like to bring in. Another thing that I like to get out of interns is learning some things that we hadn't had in our group. So a specific example actually is in support of some work that Jaclyn is doing. We've got a group of, I'm going to call them artists. Some of them are actually engineers, so they might disagree with that. But and they need to be able to test some of the work that Jaclyn's doing. And Jaclyn's team is working a lot in MATLAB, and the artists need these things to work in real time. So I have who just wrapped up recently, who was working on trying to take the MATLAB and make it into something that would function fast enough that the artists could feel like they were learning what they needed to learn. So it's programming, but it's like there's real-time aspects. There's video processing for things like SDI, which is almost nobody knows about that outside of the video industry, and then the MATLAB side. It combines a lot of neat things. And again, it wasn't something that we're trying to put into product immediately. It's kind of, and we hired that intern, by the way. She accepted. So, and yeah, so it was good seeing what her skill set was and how she could put things together. So anyway, that's an example.
Awesome. On our side, I guess I will talk about an internship we had just a little bit ago, actually. In our team, we actually tend to be a little bit different. Normally, if we have an internship available, it's because we have a project that is in need of more people, which means that all of the internships that I have hired for in the past have had a specific goal and a specific deadline, essentially, for that project. And the interns have been put in almost a leadership position taking forward on those particular projects. So one of them, for example, was we are working on a way to do essentially Dolby Vision live. And there are a lot of other concerns that come up when you're talking about live video, because you don't necessarily have the luxury of offline processing where you know what's coming next and you know what's came before, and so you can do all of these optimizations. Now you get just one frame at a time. And so we've had interns looking at that problem and designing algorithms to compensate for that different type of scenario.
Yeah, thanks, Jaclyn. Yeah, you know, with all three of your teams, even the work that the intern do is super fascinating. And I do think it, again, to everyone on the call, you know, there is so much more to our technology. And yes, it is, it can be engineering centric, but to Jim's point, you know, at the end of the day, we are all in our own way artists and how we come to work and come through, because we work creative. You know, we do work collaboratively, yes, but it's also coming in with a creative spin. So there, I'll say that. And then Asen, I don't know if you had anything to add, if you want to talk. Well, you kind of already touched on what your interns are doing with testing. But so then I kind of want to rein it back again about you know, the students that you all are looking for and hiring. I think what role do personal projects play? Because I do think that, you know, sometimes with our industry, can be super niche in what we're doing. And so sometimes there are electrical engineering or computer engineering programs that are teaching the basics, right? The foundation. But what role does personal projects, and do you encourage that from students? And is that something that you personally look at when you're combing through resumes and candidates? Anyone can start.
Sure. I'm unmuted, so I will start. Personal projects play a role. I would not say they play a huge role from my perspective. If your coursework does not cover the types of things that we are looking for example, if you go into computer science or computer engineering and all of your computer engineering classes don't necessarily relate to the type of job that I'm looking for. Like, for example, I might want at least some experience in computer vision or color science, some knowledge of more video processing. When your coursework doesn't cover that, personal projects become extremely important, because they let me know that although you did take this for coursework, you are very interested in the video sciences and you have some background. If you're in a program where a lot of your coursework does cover those aspects already, maybe personal projects aren't as important because I already know that you know things. They're always helpful to give a sense of what are you actually interested in? What do you do in your free time that does this? But I also know, being a student, personal projects and having the time to be able to do that it can be pretty challenging. So I don't put a huge substantial amount of weight on if you don't have a personal project, therefore you're not trying hard enough or anything like that.
Yeah, it's the same thing for me. I wouldn't. It helps in the sense that, right, it's not a requirement for sure. I'm looking for other things. Any general. Actually, it's very similar. The thing is with computer vision or color science, that sort of thing, it shows that you've done some actual image work, and just because the data structures and the processing for those, is a little different than other data structures, that's super important. And if you haven't had that, then that's a really tough thing. And a personal project where you showed that you did that, and then when we ask you questions about it, if it turns out that you learned, and that's the thing, right? It's swell that you did it, but when we ask about it, we'll be looking for specific things about that. And if it's a personal project that didn't relate to what we did, we probably won't even ask about it, right? It's you know, it's not super essential in and of itself. But if it happens to show that, yeah, you really got in there and learned, you know, how these things work, then it counts a lot.
Yeah, I would like to add for our team's past hiring, I do like to look for a person's ability based on his or her past working, or if there's no such internship or working experience, then personal or academic projects experience. And like Jaclyn and Jim already mentioned, it's important how you did those projects, and maybe sometimes it's about the topic and the content of the project that you did. But I also like to point out that based on my personal experience, I noticed that a lot of time folks have students come in, they do have a list of personal projects that they did, and many of them looks very impressive in terms of like the cutting edge technology or focusing on a very important or you know, valuable topic. But most of the time I fail to notice that they follow through this project with a more sort of like a real world kind of fashion approach to the project, meaning I know it's exciting, you get the project started, you get things done, you put things up to GitHub or something, but it's also important you do certain level of follow-up work like testing or scalability kind of design or future planning for your project. I understand if it's not going to happen anytime soon, but I think from a real world perspective, those kind of, you know, follow up and testing and future planning are equally as important as you get the things done. So that's something I would like to add.
No, thank you. I think definitely all great info. And I think that the three of you, you know, I want to be cognizant of time here. Also, for everybody on the call, if you do have any questions, you know, you can feel free to, again, drop it in the chat or post it in Q&A. And I think maybe to kind of wrap up the conversation, if any one of you kind of want to focus on, I guess, like something, because I think there's a lot of students today that is learning about the technology piece, right? Because I think when it comes to entertainment, and again, creating spectacular experiences, people don't necessarily think about the tools that are being used, right? It's always about the storytelling. And obviously our technology is used in a way to enhance that story. So for the students on this call that maybe are just learning for the first time about vision and about Atmos, like what, in terms of, you know, you three can answer in any order, but are there any other resources that you would suggest for students to Google, right? We all have access to the internet. Like, so is there something that you would encourage some of these students to be doing in addition, obviously, to their education in academia, but in addition to that, is there any resources that you could suggest?
Yeah, for me, one, and I guess we need to preface this with kind of our backgrounds, but I have a couple teams, but one of the teams and where I'm located is in Los Angeles, and the team that I work with there is making tools for artists to be able to create Dolby Vision, basically for the home primarily, and a little bit for the cinema. But so I don't know. One thing that I find it's fun and a really helpful thing, if you have a camera, manual. In fact, these days you can go get apps for your phone that allow you to control it in a very manual manner. There's one called Filmic for the iPhone. Learning that kind of stuff is helpful because it's you know, if you actually learn how to manually adjust all those things, you will have learned quite a bit about the kind of color and imaging that we do. And if you actually then start to bring those images in and work on them, you know, with the kind of tech that you know, that you know, really goes a long way towards that sort of thing, so, towards the kinds of personal projects that would catch our eye, right?
Right.
Some of that and shown that. So that's one.
Thanks, Jen.
And from my perspective, a lot of the times we get applications from either people that know a lot on the artistic side or people that are much more so on the computer science, computer engineering side, and very little in between. So if you are on, let's say, the computer science side and you don't have as much vision science sort of background, color science, there are a number of resources you can go to. SMPTE is one of them. They have either a number of introductory webcasts that talk about color science essentials or video essentials that will get you 85% of the way there. And if you want to go another little bit, they also have short courses, some of which I've been involved in, that we really do try and teach you what you would need to know for this sort of industry.
You might want to tell everybody what SMPTE is, because if I went and Googled
Yeah,
SMPTE,
that's
the
true.
way I was
That's
stuck.
true. SMPTE, it stands for Society of Motion Picture Television Engineers. I'll put it in the chat.
Thanks, Jaclyn. And Jaclyn, also to follow, or even Jim, if you want to answer this, then you can chime in too. But so for the students that are more on the creative side, but are starting their journey in towards the technical route, what languages are prominent and used mostly, especially here at Dolby, that you would be looking for?
Well, okay. I mean, so this is not something I've hired against. It's one I've thought a lot about. That you know, but I'm taking a little bit of a flyer here. But I'd love to see someone who looked at Python and there's something called PyTest, which probably won't make any sense, but the Python part would. So that's probably a good way. The reason I'm saying that is that, and Hanyang might agree with this, but I think that there's like this tremendous amount of talent that then we don't get to tap into because someone doesn't take that extra step that you just talked about to learn some of that. So we have a tendency, in my team, we would gloss over that. We'd say, well, too much art, we don't know what to do with that person. But if they had some of that background, there are some. It's essentially a QA, quality assurance function, where they would be using those tools to, their knowledge of the art side plus this bit of tech to be able to say, oh yeah, that's what we expect this tool to be doing. And as I said, I actually haven't hired that way, but I think it would. I haven't. One of my teams in Germany did that, and it was spectacularly effective. And that's why it's something I would like to bring back to Burbank, but I haven't had the right candidate walk in. And it's exactly the question you asked. That's what's missing.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I want to be cognizant of time. So, Jaclyn, do you have something to just?
Sure, just super quick. We're also doing a lot of hiring regarding machine learning and AI, so PyTorch and TensorFlow and all of that. Our base language is MATLAB, but these newer ones are really helpful as well.
Thanks, Jaclyn. Sun, any last minute things?
I'm good. I think Jim mostly aligned with my needs and experience as well.
All right, great. Well, thank you, all three of you, for sharing some of the insights and what you're looking for in intern and future talent. So, and thank you everyone on the call for joining. Obviously, you can feel free to find me or connect with us on LinkedIn. But thanks so much for joining the summit today. We appreciate your time and look forward to seeing your applications.